Let's talk about managing your weight. But first, let's look at this quote. Food is about far more than just nourishment. It is about identity, culture, family, social bonds, friendships, and love. It forms the basis of most of our important celebrations. Let's look at some of the faddish and sometimes questionable history of American weight loss. From 1903, a bar of soap was supposed to be good for you for losing weight. Cigarettes were advertised as a weight loss method. Yikes. Here's one. It was called AIDS diet candy. This is how old I am. I remember this. Take 2 of these and follow a 1,200 calorie diet and you will lose weight. And of course, the reality is don't take 2 of these and follow a 1,200 calorie diet and you'll lose weight. Then there were the Metrical shakes, 1969. I guess now they call them Boost. Dr. Yoni Friedhoff, he's a bariatric surgeon, wrote a book called The Diet Fix. He said weight loss involves many broad-based behaviors, such as cooking meals from fresh whole ingredients while minimizing restaurant meals and ultra-processed foods, but also trying to eat those meals free from distractions, ideally with family or friends. Exercising as often and as much as is enjoyable. How's that? Enjoyable. And appreciating that short bouts also provide benefit, but also in terms of reducing risk of disease, not smoking. Cultivating good night's sleep. When considering any dietary, what he refers to as indulgence, asking first if it's worth it, and second, if it is, what's the smallest amount needed to be happy? Drinking alcohol only in moderation, and nurturing friendships and relationships. I love how he puts friends and relationships in there with all these other factors. Also, Dr. Kevin Hall, whose study we talked about, the one on ultra-processed and unprocessed foods and weight loss, when he talks about diet and exercise, he says, don't look at exercise as a weight loss tool. And this is where I have to tell you, exercise is an important lifestyle choice, but don't exercise just to lose weight, because exercise or activity does not burn as many calories as you really want it to. Let's review some of the information that was in the first video. Energy balance. There's energy intake, which are the calories. Proteins, carbohydrates, fats, and alcohol all contain calories. Even if you're drinking those calories, they still add up. And then energy expenditure. 3 components of energy expenditure: basal metabolic rate, physical activity, and the thermic effect of food, or resting metabolism, physical activity, and food breakdown. Determination of body weight should be based on body composition. Our values should be considered when maintaining good health, personal appearance, and performance reasons. While I recorded in the first video numbers, and I haven't gone back and edited that video, I don't want you to think about those numbers. Where fat is distributed in the body may have more of an effect on risk for chronic illness than actually having excess body fat. Central adiposity or obesity refers to the fat that's found in our viscera. Viscera refer to those internal organs, also known as intra-abdominal fat. Visceral fat may be more of a risk factor for type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and heart disease. We have the apple-shaped person, where you have that fat in and around the abdominal regions. This can be determined by, well, the high-tech instrument known as a tape measure. The pear-shaped person, fat generally around the hips. This fat that accumulates around the hips is not the visceral or intra-abdominal fat, but it's subcutaneous or found right under the skin. And this fat does not appear to have as much of a risk for chronic illness as intra-abdominal or the apple-shaped person. Body mass index is not really an accurate measurement of body fat. It doesn't really tell us a lot about risk for these diseases. What it basically does is tell us the relationship between body weight and height. You can certainly find out for yourself what the recommended BMI is supposed to be. I'm not going to go into that. I will say, though, if your numbers are really high, unless you're a sumo wrestler, chances are you do have excess fat, and that can be a risk factor for these illnesses listed. But a lot of times there are folks who work out and that excess weight is muscle, it isn't fat, and that's not indicated or shown when you're measuring BMI. So for the athlete, the pregnant woman, and some older people, body mass index might not be an appropriate measure of health risk. We look a little bit closer at adipose tissue. Adipose tissue is another name for fat tissue. Adipocytes is another name for cells that contain fat, and these fats store excess energy, or those excess carbons that you consumed, whether they're from protein, carbohydrate, or fat. They form triglycerides and get stored in these adipose cells. Adipose tissue can regulate energy balance through hormone production, hormones such as leptin and ghrelin. You can see there are a lot of methods to treat obesity. Which is the right one for the person who's overweight is hard to tell. Surgery, there's liposuction. You can see the different types of surgery. The picture in the upper right shows the gastric sleeve. There's also gastric bypass, intestinal resection. There are medications, over-the-counter medications, and prescribed medications that are available. The thing is, these methods can be health-threatening and usually don't result in long-term sustained weight loss and or a healthy lifestyle. If you don't change the behaviors that led you to overeat to begin with, these methods are going to help you take the weight off, but they will not help you keep the weight off. We talked about short-term and long-term fasting. During a short-term fast, you draw on glycogen and body fat to provide energy. But in the long-term fast, you draw on body protein in addition to body fat because you've depleted the glycogen stores. This is what happens to the body whether the fast is voluntary or involuntary. When considering weight loss, it's important to lose the excess fat weight and preserve the lean body mass or muscle. The reason for weight loss should be to decrease excess body fat, and this is a slow process. The optimal weight loss, if you're trying to lose body fat, would be 1 to 2 pounds per week. So a pound of fat requires a loss or deficit of 3,500 calories. And if you're in a calorie deficit of 500 calories per day over a week, theoretically, that should result in a negative energy balance of 3,500 calories or 1 pound of fat per week. How would you accomplish this? Hypothetically, 40 minutes of aerobic exercise is about 300 calories. It would put you in a deficit of about 300 calories, preserving lean body mass, basal metabolic rate, and it drawing on your stored fat. If you decrease your intake by 22 grams of fat per day, that's about 200 calories, which results in negative energy balance of 500 calories a day, causing a loss of about 1 pound of fat per week while preserving lean body mass. A faster rate of weight loss forces the body to use muscle protein, as I showed you in that slide with what happens when we looked at what happens during a long-term fast. You start drawing on muscle protein because your body still prefers glucose for energy and you're not getting it from glycogen stores anymore. Unfortunately, this 3,500 calorie rule sort of assumes that fat loss is like this, that you just keep losing weight steadily. When the reality is, well, it's more like this. You go down, you go up, you go down. It's not that simple, because there's a lot more involved than just intake and expenditure. A lot of people are going on low-carb or very low-carb diets, so I just want to give you what some of the information is on the results of those diets. There's about a 6% success rate for losing weight and keeping weight off with this kind of diet. And during prolonged fasting, these low-calorie or low-carb diets, your basal metabolic rate goes down, and your lean body mass, as we said, is being broken down to provide glucose. That body chemistry, as we said, similar to what we talked at under feasting and long-term fasting. More on the fasting side, right? To summarize low carb versus low fat, Dr. Hall's research, low carb diets are at least as effective for weight loss as other diets, but energy expenditure and body fat appear to depend very little on the amount of carbohydrate to fat in the diet. Long-term weight loss studies suggest very little difference between the interventions varying carbohydrate and dietary fat. And individual weight loss variability, right now it's not really explained by known diet biology interactions. Which diet works best? The one that you can stay on. I'd like to briefly explain the difference between weight loss and fat loss. Weight loss, thumbs down. It occurs quickly. It results in a loss of lean body mass or muscle tissue. It's a temporary weight loss that includes some fat, water weight, muscle mass, but no change in behavior. Whereas fat loss takes time, but it preserves muscle mass. It can result in long-term weight loss and positive behavior changes. You can take a look at this. You can pause this to see how all of these different diets work. I've been asked what's the difference in the effectiveness of these. Well, have a look at the column on the right. Not much. And what are 10 ways in which low-carb diets work? Here you go. Some of the benefits of exercise are that it promotes, well, you can look at all of these. Exercise is great. My favorite part of being active is the shower. I do want to tell you, over-exercising in one area of the body does not result in spot reduction. There is really no such way to exercise off specific parts of the body. Weight loss strategies, I'm going to put at the top, I put at the top here, be realistic. And meal planning should include a diet that is nutritionally adequate, provides your essential nutrients, fiber, and calories needed to maintain health. You should also consider that the diet should be planned to promote health by limiting those saturated and trans fats, refined or added sugars, and excess sodium. Your planned intake of calories should come from complex carbs or simple carbs from fruits and vegetables, proteins and fats to meet the recommendations. So that's dietary strategies or suggestions. Physical activity, you want it to be something you like. If you have to do something you don't like, it's going to be a chore and you're going to hate doing it. I've been asked when's the best time of day to be active? When you have the time. What's the best exercise? The one you like. So you have to consider calorie intake, calorie expenditure, but let me tell you, those two pale in contrast to behavior change. Behavior modification is the hardest part. It takes time to change the behaviors that led you to overeat to begin with. If you're someone who eats under stress, you go on a diet, and then you lose your weight and you go off your diet. If you do not change the behaviors that led you to overeat to begin with, as soon as you experience stress, you're going to go back to those old behaviors, which include overeating. Please remember, there are no foods, no combinations of foods, or special formulas or pills that will burn off, melt away, or rearrange fat. So to summarize, it may be helpful for folks to know their body composition, knowing their percent muscle mass versus body fat. There are different measures to determine body composition. I went over these in the initial video. The distribution of body fat can affect your health. Here we talk about the difference between the visceral or intra-abdominal fat in the apple-shaped person versus subcutaneous fat in the pear. BMI is a suggested measure for determining appropriate weight, but it doesn't tell you anything about body composition. A slow rate of weight loss is suggested to help preserve that lean body mass while reducing fat mass. Decreasing intake, along with decreasing expenditure and behavior modification, is the best prescription for permanent change. And because I can't say this enough, please remember, there are no foods, combinations of foods, special formulas or pills that will burn off, melt away, or rearrange fat. All right, I think I'm going to go have a snack. Bye-bye.